Tracy, are you good to go? All right. Rex, David, we're good to go.
Good to go.
All right. Let's rock and roll. Good evening. I would like to call to order the City of Keizer Budget Committee for 2020. It is May 11th, and I would like to ask our city recorder to please call roll of the Budget Committee.
Kathy Clark.
Here.
Don Clark.
Here.
Kevin Dial.
Here.
Kim Freeman.
Here.
J.D. Gillis.
Here.
Roland Herrera.
Here.
Daniel Kohler.
Here.
Marlene Parsons.
Here.
Ali Rosuli.
Here.
Laura Reed. Francisco Saldivar.
Here.
Julia Sargent.
Here.
Elizabeth Smith.
Here.
And Jonathan Thompson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for the work you've put in to help with our city budget this year, one of our most important documents for making sure that we are accountably and effectively using the dollars entrusted to us by our neighbors to run the city of Keizer. The next order of business is the election of a budget committee chair, who this year will be a counselor, and a budget committee vice chair, who will this year be one of the non-council members, citizen members of the committee. So nominations are now open for chair and vice chair. And I would like to, with the indulgence of the committee, nominate as the chair and Mr. Kevin Dial as the vice chair.
This is Kim. I would second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Kathy, would you restate your chair nomination because you cut out on my end?
My chair nomination is for Councilor Marlene Parsons.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It did cut out.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? And that nomination slate has been moved, and I would make that a motion and second. All in favor? Gosh, this is hard to do because everybody will just say aye or nay. Is there anybody opposed to the slate? Hearing none, the chair and vice chair are approved unanimously. Councilor Parsons, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, everyone, please make sure your chat box is up. You received an email today from Tim Wood earlier. As we proceed on with the presenters of each of these presentations, if you have a question, please type that question in or try to hold it till the end, and I will, between myself, Mr. Wood, and Mr. Dial, we will try to get you in to get that question. Please stay muted until you need to speak. We do hear a lot of background noises, and we want to make sure that we hear the presenter when he's presenting, he or she is presenting. Okay, so can I ask one question, Tim? Tim, is the electronic version of the budget the same as our paper version?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you, great. So on page 16, we will start with an approval of the budget calendar.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the budget calendar for 2021.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the budget calendar. And I'm going to just ask anybody opposed. Is that correct? A lot better, huh? Anybody opposed, say nay. Perfect, okay. That budget is approved. Now, next, we need approval of last year's fiscal year 1920 budget committee minutes. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that 18-19 be approved.
This is Kim. I'll second the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Dial and seconded by Ms. Freeman to approve the budget committee minutes.
Friendly amendment?
Go ahead.
that it be for 2019-2020. I think the motion was stated for 18-19.
Oh, yes.
Correct. Sorry, thank you.
That's okay. All right. And the second approves? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we have an amendment to that. Any other questions? All right. If you're opposed, say nay. Awesome. That passes. Okay. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager. Every year he gives us his message. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then after that, we will do public testimony. So Chris Epley, it's all yours.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to draw everybody's attention to a couple of pages before we get to the message. The first is page 3, and that's, of course, my favorite part of the budget, and that's different quotes on democracy. Because it's, I mean, how much fun can you insert into a budget? This is my amount of fun that I can insert into a budget. So, sorry, Tim. I only wanted to draw your attention to one, or actually I'm going to do 2. The first one is that democracy is based upon the conviction that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people. I believe that to be completely true. The second quote that I found interesting this year was, the best cure for the ills of democracy is more democracy. So we'll all have an opportunity coming up in November. Please use your opportunity to participate in democracy. The second page would be the next page, and that is page number 4, and this is our Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. I simply want to recognize Tim Wood and the work that he does on our fiscal documents, on the budget, on our annual audit. His work is crucial to making sure that we have a fiscal picture that is transparent and understandable throughout the community. And the fact that we have gotten this award every year for how many years now, Tim? A dozen? At least?
We've received this one about 7 years now.
Okay, well, it just seems like a dozen. But anyway, I anticipate there will be a dozen soon. This is just excellent work, so thank you very much, Tim. Page 8 is the city manager's budget message, and I will simply go ahead and read that. Honorable Mayor Clark, city councilors, budget committee members, and citizens of Keizer, I am pleased to present the city of Keizer's annual budget for the fiscal year 2020 and 21. Overall, the city of Keizer is in a relatively stable financial position given the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on the economic environment. Consistent with the rest of the state and nation, the city is experiencing an immediate drop in discretionary revenues associated with the event center, as well as municipal court, as residents are being encouraged to stay home and not gather in large groups. The immediate impact is expected to last through the first quarter of fiscal year 2020 and 21. However, long-term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic are yet to be determined. With respect to fiscal year 2020-21, the city is expecting overall operating revenues to remain consistent with fiscal year 19-20. The city is intentionally not proposing to impose an increase in water or stormwater utility rates in an effort to provide some financial relief and stability for our residents. Property taxes are expected to increase approximately 3%. Based on the annual increase in taxable assessed value. Much of the increase in property taxes will be offset by ongoing declines in franchise fees as more and more residents are eliminating telephone, landlines, and cable services. And you'll see that when we get into the revenue section. You'll be able to see those declines. City is anticipating a 2% sewer rate increase. Sewer rates are set by the city of Salem, who manages the city's sewer infrastructure. The rate increase is needed to sustain service levels and funds necessary for capital improvements. Fiscal year 2020-21 operating budget, which includes personal services and materials and services, is expecting to increase by 2% as compared to the fiscal year 19-20. The increase is primarily attributed to an increase in wages, insurance, and pension costs. The city anticipates transitioning the police department's increase in community services officer, position to an additional property and evidence position and adding an additional event center employee once the venue rental activities return to its pre-COVID-19 levels. In addition, the increase is associated with the sewer rate increase, which is passed through to the City of Salem. Capital outlay is expected to increase by 11% as the city intends to resurface a significant portion of River Road, basically starting where we left off this last year and going up over the hill toward Wheatland. The increase is also attributed to relocating a stormwater drainage pipe. I would like to thank the City Council, the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee for providing helpful policy direction in creating this balanced budget, the important questions that you asked, the request for detail needed to understand and appreciate the city services are helpful to all citizens of Keizer. Once again, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to going through this document. Thank you very much. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Wood, Danielle Bethel is waiting for a link. She is going to give public testimony tonight. David, I think David is forwarding her the link. Is that right, David?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. She's going to come on and she's going to give public testimony tonight. I had a question for City Attorney. Do we have a motion and a second after each fund? Is that correct?
Sharon, could you unmute?
Thank you, Chris. Duly noted. Yes, you do need.
That's right. That's what I thought. So after each fund that is given by the presenter and all questions are asked, we will need a motion and a second for each of those. So just note through going through that.
I would point out that the Administrative Services Fund is going to have a number of budgets in it, and so you don't need to approve each one of those budgets, the city manager, city attorney, city recorder, human resources, etc. You'll wait until you get through all of the Administrative Services Fund, have a vote. But once we get on to the general fund and some of the other funds, you literally will want to take a vote after each one.
Okay. So the Administrative Services Fund, we want to listen all the way through the citywide administration and
Correct.
then make a motion?
And then make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Do I have, as we're waiting for Danielle Bethel to get on, do we have anyone else waiting in the queue to give public testimony?
So, Madam Chair, if I may, I was asked if I might be able to present from the Cultural Center. They were uncertain. Last year, they brought a representative from each of the organizations within the Cultural Center, and I am the council liaison to the center. So with the permission of the chair and the indulgence of the committee, I can give a brief report on that line item, which is already in the recommended budget.
Oh, go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. So the Keizer Cultural Center, which is also known as our Keizer Heritage Center, is the home to 4 of our wonderful organizations providing the arts and for our community. That would be the Keizer Arts Association, the Keizer Heritage Museum, the Keizer Community Library, and the Keizer Homegrown Theater. Those 4 have created a very vibrant culture of arts and cultural enrichment for the entire community. As you might imagine, right now the building is closed, but it has not been inactive. During this time, there has been a concerted effort by the board to make sure that the building is in good operating condition, which is their charge. As a result, some significant needs did turn up, and because of the good budgeting that has been done over the years that they have been operating the building, those needs are going to be able to be met. Specifically, that has to do with scheduling painting for the entire outside of the building, which will happen later this year, replacing the lift with a United States-made elevator or lift that will go into that space, and replacement of the water heater. Those are all significant investments in that building that will come out of the sinking fund, and that is what it was intended for, and make sure that that building remains operable. The part that the city budget plays into, the $20,000 of a match for the operating funds, is separately accounted for and continues to provide economic stability for the cultural center. as a result, they've been able to add more programming and concentrate on what is going to help grow the audience for that building, the community engagement in that building, and even more programming going into the future. There's even virtual story time that is back online for the kids in our community, as many of them are now distance learning. There's a plan to go ahead with the reopening as the Marion County plan will allow, and then to be able to have art classes and people visiting the museum and the library in a socially distanced and appropriate way. And I know that the Keizer Homegrown Theater is also working on their plans going forward as best we can with a degree of uncertainty that we still are facing. But I want to let everyone know that the dollars that have been allocated have been very well spent and created a tremendous facility and space and welcoming home for the arts in our community. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Mayor Clark on this issue with the heritage? I have one question. Kathy, we're still doing the 20,000, is that correct?
That is correct. It is currently in the wow, you can tell I just switched back to my day job, in the manager's recommended budget.
Okay, thank you. No other questions for Kathy? Okay. Is Danielle on yet?
Not here. Madam Chair, may I make a comment real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Something that I forgot to mention earlier is that this meeting is actually being streamed out on our Keizer 23 or KeizerTV.com page into Facebook Live in both English and Spanish.
Okay, good.
And we have the ability to take public testimony through both of those mediums also live. So
fantastic.
Anyway, I'm very proud of that platform that we've been able to create. We are ahead of other governments around us, and that makes me happy. So
that makes me happy too. I'm glad that we have that. So I'll just wait a few more minutes for Danielle Bethel to come on, because I know that she's still waiting for the link. Have we not been able to get that to her?
Oh, there it is.
I just got a text from her, Danielle, and she asked if someone could please send her that link. Tracy, do you have it, or?
I think Tim
It'll be in her email right now.
Okay.
Okay, I'll text her that back. Thank you.
Thank you. She should just be on in just a moment. Again, please keep your chat box up. Please be prepared for questions as each presenter presents these funds. As we go up, that'll make it a lot easier to be more efficient, and also easier probably on the interpreters as we go through. Please keep your mics muted. And I guess when we do have a motion, I will ask for a vote. All in favor. So at that point, then I will ask you to unmute. We will take the vote, and then you can mute back up again. Okay? So I'll remind you to do that. So does anybody have any questions before we get into public testimony about the process? Okay, is there anyone that does not have their chat box that needs help? Wow, very good. Yes, we did. I'm sorry, yes, Chris answered that and said that we will actually make one motion on the Administrative Services Fund. So when we get to down before we get to the Public Works Funds, that's just all one fund. So we don't make a motion or a second until we get down to the Public Works Funds, okay? So it's going to be one motion and 1 second.
And then the Public Works Funds are each individual fund, so you'll make a motion after each one.
Okay, very good, thank you. Do we have Danielle yet?
Yes, I see her box just showed up, so she should be here shortly.
Oh, she's on. Okay, Danielle, it's all yours.
Hi. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so sorry. That was like a nightmare.
That's okay. We were waiting. It's okay.
Yeah, so I'm Danielle Bethel from the Keizer Chamber, and I don't know why you can't see me, because I can't see me. So if you can see me, great.
We can hear you. That's all that matters.
Okay, good.
I'm going to time you for 5 minutes, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever you need. I just wanted to come in here and normally I'd be in person, obviously, and share the last years of activities with the Keizer Chamber, and then just give you guys an update on what it looks like from my perspective in the COVID-19 crisis. I know you've all seen our budget request, and the only difference from last year to this year is the allocation of the TOT dollars. We asked for the same 15%, and as it's noted in Tim's projections, that would be $27,000 over $15,000 that we were awarded last year. We've honored every commitment that we made last year, specifically with our outreach in the Latino community. I'm very, very proud of the efforts and strides that we made with the one FTE that we hired who's bilingual. We've done door-to-door engaging and education in the last year with Erica, speaking to them directly, and then inviting me to the conversation once they were comfortable to engage the business community in Keizer. We've solidified a partnership with the Latino Business Alliance to where we're recruiting members on their behalf and then passing them along and sharing them, if you will, because they're also members of ours. Teaching them basically how to engage the community in a civic process and also a business process, and supporting them as best we can through every business component to make sure that they're compliant within the state regulations and guidelines, and also getting them to really engage in the community as best we can. A great example is the partnership that we have with Los Dos Hermanos. Teresa's a huge fan of the Keizer Chamber of Commerce and is constantly referring folks to us because of the efforts that we've provided to her. A most recent example is going into her restaurant and sitting down as soon as the COVID-19 situation came about in Keizer, and really went through their step-by-step plan to make sure they understood what it was going to take to keep their doors open on a daily basis. Talking about a business plan that would be I suppose, standard, and modifying that to a takeout delivery concept and reducing staff and overhead so that way they're not overextending themselves. I can tell you that to date, we've done that exact same scenario across the board for 172 businesses. And I get a little choked up about it because it's the most emotional work I've ever done in my life. I'm sure that the mayor has shared with you that we're facing a lot of mental health challenges in our community, and suicide and the concept of suicide is up significantly in our community, and that burden falls to the chamber if it's a business owner, because they're calling us and leaning on us for advice and connection. So I tell you all of that because we're working our tails off for this community, and I've had to lay off staff because of the current situation that we're under. And we know that going forward, we're going to hit some downturns, and we need to be creative, and we need to work diligently in collaboration with our partners to really get people to reopen and re-engage our community. And when I look at the TOT concept and what that money is supposed to be spent on, I don't know how I'm supposed to shoulder the concept of regrowth and rebuild with the current budget that I have, and I need you as my partner to help me with that. So as much as you probably would like to just give me the $15,000, I really am pleading for you to look at the larger concept and give me the 15% and let me show you what we can do with that once we're able to bring people back to the community. It's going to take more than me, but it is going to take dollars behind it to make it happen. So I don't know how long that was. I'm sorry if I'm talking really fast because I can't see the timer. Does anyone have any questions?
You were perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and unmute if you have a question of Danielle, please.
Marlene?
Yes.
It's Kim Freeman. So Danielle, I just want to thank you, you and your staff, and also the Chamber Board for the report that you submitted to us, for your continuous work in the community, thinking outside of the box, helping our businesses through this very unique, challenging times, and just hoping that every business in Keizer will come through this, and your flexibility, and again, everything we asked of you and the Chamber, you have delivered on. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're honored to do it.
Thank you, Kim. Madam Mayor?
Thank you so much. I've been on several phone calls where with Danielle and other leaders in our community through it with the governor's office, with Marion County, and she's been on countless other calls to rally people together, to bring our best and most creative solutions together to help each other moving forward within a future that we want to have as much control and direction of as possible. Danielle's absolutely right that the strain and the stress and the anxiety level has been very, very high, and it's by that touch, that call, that socially distanced visit that has made a huge difference for people in our community. This wasn't in the job description for any of us, including Danielle, when we all decided to serve as we do, but it became part of our job description because it comes under the description of community service and really being a servant. You, the board, Erica, and our businesses throughout Keizer have gone above and beyond, and you're continuing to do so. And it is truly an honor and a privilege to work alongside for the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jonathan. Unmute.
There we go. I just wanted to add, putting on my chamber hat for just a moment, that we've also been working with businesses who are not members. Membership is not a requirement at this point to get access to services for the chamber. I think you've all seen the Keizer's Hungry page, things like that the chamber team has put together, and membership is not a requirement. At this point, it's all hands on deck, and we'll sort it out at the end. Obviously, we hope those people realize the value and do join, but for the time being, membership is not a requirement to access the help of the chamber. And I think that if you look at the call log in Danielle's phone that starts at about 6 in the morning and ends at about 11 o'clock at night, she's dealing with a lot more than just chamber members. So it's appreciated on all fronts. But I just wanted to make it clear that, if businesses are needing help, we're here as a resource, whether you're a member at this point or not.
Thank you, Jonathan. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see anybody else. Okay, thank you, Danielle, very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Good luck with your process.
Thank you. Now, do we have anybody else that is come on for public testimony? Mr. Wood, do we know if anybody else? Okay, hopefully we didn't miss them. Next, we will start with our budget presentations and deliberations. The first one is the Administrative Services Fund. Turn to page 94, and I'll turn it over to City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, do you have anything you want to chat about on this before we dive into City Manager's budget?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. We do have some new faces on the Budget Committee this year, so I wanted to give an overview of Oregon budget law. This will probably be a refresher for many of you. But Oregon has very strict laws when it comes to municipal budget process. This Zoom process almost didn't happen this year because it did take a governor's order to allow this type of meeting to take place with restraints on public testimony and the ability for the public to be involved. The budget law is really here to promote transparency through the notice requirements that we're supposed to provide to the community, through engaging the public, having public testimony, having citizens involved as far as the budget committee goes. As we've talked about before, the budget is presented in total. However, each fund is really a standalone entity. We can't take money from one fund to cover a loss in another fund. Basically, the city has 20 plus separate businesses that are going at any given time. So it really is kind of a juggling act. Our emphasis is on the ability to continue to provide services into the future. It really is a long-term focus. Say if you compare us to a corporation, their emphasis is really on profitability and providing a return to their shareholders. For us, it's the ability to continue to provide water, not just now, but in 20 years. So our emphasis is a lot more on reinvesting into our system, making sure that the programs that we put into place are sustainable, not just in the near term, but the long term. We dig a little bit into the long-term impacts during the long-range planning meetings. Really the emphasis has been 3 to 5 years. But we also have processes that go beyond that. We have master plans for the park system. We have master plans for the water system. We're working to get a master plan for the stormwater system. We have all these plans that really look at about a 20-year horizon, if not longer. So we have a much different emphasis on what we're trying to do. Unfortunately, we're kind of trapped into looking at the budget at a one-year snapshot. So some of the things that you'll see here, we may think, oh, we can save some money here or there, but it's really the long term, the ability to be able to sustain into the future. There's also very strict penalties associated with violating Oregon budget law. I don't know if it really rates up there as an orange jumpsuit kind of a situation, but definitely people can lose their jobs if we don't do this correctly. If we do make mistakes such as overspend our budgets, there are very strict processes we have to go to. We would have to submit a plan of how we're going to correct that for the city council to approve. So the error does become very public. As a reminder, just from an administrative standpoint, we do budget to the nearest $100. With some of our budgets, specific line items are very small. So when you look at a $100 increase in something, it really jumps out at you as a large percentage increase. But that's just kind of how we do it, just from a practical standpoint. We don't necessarily want to nickel and dime in each line item. We do budget on a reasonable basis. We try to look at each line and figure out, okay, over the history of our departments, our funds, our programs, this is what we likely will spend. Some years we spend more in a specific line item, some years we spend less. The important part is within that entire category, whether it be the fund or the department, that we do meet our budget expectations and come in under budget. As we've discussed, after each fund or each department is discussed, we need to have a motion to approve the fund. At the end of all of this, we'll need a motion to approve the entire budget and the tax rate that goes along with that. You can make amendments to the budgets either while we're discussing them or at the end before we do the vote on the entire budget in total. With respect to outside budget requests, I did send out a summary. As Danielle identified previously, the chamber is really the only budget request that is not currently fully included within the budget document itself, within the manager recommended document. In the event you do decide that you want to go with the 15% TOT tax revenue, we do have availability within the ending fund balance to absorb that. So we don't need to play the game of reducing expenses here so that we can add those expenses in. Given that, before we jump into the administrative services area, there are a few things that you'll see throughout the entire budget document. So it'd probably be wise just to address some of those up front. If you turn to page 40 within the budget document, this is kind of a reminder of one of the guiding principles for the city. This is the comparative tax rate and FTE by city analysis that we've done on an annual basis. This analysis takes a lot of energy and effort to put together. A lot of hands touch it. This is really kind of giving us the guidance that the city founders really wanted. This tells us that we have one of the lowest tax rates throughout all of the state of Oregon, and this is by design to really have a limited government, so that the city of Keizer really is only providing essential services. So the irony of this is with the COVID-19 pandemic that's been going on, we, by and large, have been sitting pretty well because we do only provide really essential services, the water, the sewer, the stormwaters. The areas where you're seeing large financial impacts, the huge layoffs, in the large cities, you're seeing in the discretionary areas, the parks and rec departments, the libraries, the areas that are really nice benefits to have as a community, but they're not ones that our forefathers really laid out as this is the direction we wanted to head. We didn't have a city that was set up to provide a lot of services. So we do try to do the best that we can with what we have. And this chart really just kind of lays that out, that yes, we still are kind of at the bottom as far as property tax rates go. The next page, I'd invite you to.
And also FTE per thousand.
Correct. One of the benefits to us having a very small FTE pool is that we do outsource a lot of our projects. We don't pay a lot of public works to pave River Road. We outsource that to community. When the times get tough as it is now, with FTE full-time equivalents, so that would be the number of staff that we have on hand. We have a very limited staff, so again, we outsource a lot of the major projects we do. We don't try to do them in-house. When times get tough, we can simply reduce the number of capital projects we do rather than having to look at laying off a city staff. So we're very nimble. We're also kind of a cash basis city. You don't see a lot of debt on our books. In comparison to many other cities, they finance a lot of their projects. We tend to be more on the cash basis unless it really makes sense to have a real long-term asset such as the Dearborn Bridge that we financed a year ago. So we're very nimble. We're very responsive to the current economic environment. On page 45, if you would turn, some of the other areas that I think about when we start putting this together, some of the short-term areas of concern, obviously the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've looked at each of our budgets and tried to identify what, if any, type of impact we may see in the near future. We also try to take in consideration the city councilor's short-term goals. We also look at what we think the general fund revenues. Our general fund is our most constrained fund. So we look at the revenues and we try to see what we can do with what we have. Probably the biggest thing, as I indicated before, our biggest priority is maintaining existing services. Our goal is to be able to provide water and other essential services well out into 20 plus years from now. And to do that, the priority is really to continue to invest in our capital. We have a lot of working capital, a lot of capital outlay, a lot of projects that we try to get done, and that's really just to maintain what we have by and large. So those are some of the main guiding principles that I have. If we turn to page 63, as Chris indicated in our opening budget message, with respect to city staffing, we are adding 1.5 FTE or 1.5 full-time equivalent employees. The areas that we're doing that in, on page 63, under the city recorder area, we're going to be looking to add one additional body, assuming that the event center is back to life. Right now, we're anticipating somewhat of a freeze for May and June, although we do have people starting to book July, August, September time periods. So hopefully, we'll start to see some of that revenue come back. At the point that we feel like it's sustainable again, we'll go ahead and add that additional FTE, and that's one full-time body that will be assisting in the event center. If you turn the page to 65, the other half position that we're adding is within the police department. In 1920, we had a community service officer, a half-time position. We're going to be taking that half-time position plus some cost savings from not having temporary employees and rolling that into an additional property and evidence position. The volume of work there is really dictating that we need more than just one person on top of that. The next page I'd invite you to is page 67. This is really an outline of the personnel costs. As far as cost of living goes, as we discussed during the long-range planning meeting, the cost of living, we typically look at a CPI index. The index that we used was indicating about a 2.37% increase. We do have some union labor bargaining agreements that dictate what the cost of living increase is for those two groups. The Keizer Police Association is looking at 2.5% in comparison to the 2.3%. The Public Works Union, they've negotiated the CPI plus an outer and lower limit, so they'll be looking at a 2.37% increase. The non-represented employees, to provide some parity, will be getting about a 2.5% increase. At least that's what we have factored into this budget at this time. This is in addition to any step increases as people move up the step system within their classification. The other change that you'll see throughout the budget is a change to our wellness program. We have a program for the police department, for the union represented folks there. We also have a second program for the non-represented and for the public works group. Unfortunately, the vendor that we've been using in the past decided to discontinue offering their products. So we've had to change products. We're in the process of changing products to a new product that will help us administer the wellness program. In addition to adjusting the wellness program to try to increase participation rates. We do have fairly high participation, all things considered, but we want to do a little bit better. Given that, we're increasing the non-represented and the public works union employees the potential of receiving up to $500 a year if they participate fully in the wellness program. This is to match the police department, who has the opportunity to receive $500 a year. So you'll see a little bit of that impact floating throughout all of the budgets. The other area I'd like to talk about is insurance benefits. You'll see that going up about 7 to 8%. We do go out and actively negotiate with all of our insurance brokers, insurance agents every year. They typically come in high and we whittle them down. This year we've done fairly well. The rate increases range from 0 to 8%. So some of them are keeping it low, and we definitely appreciate that. You'll see a blended about 7.5% throughout the budget for each different department. We don't think that everyone's going to take the most expensive package that the city offers, but we do want to have the opportunity if folks do head that direction. So with that, I would say let's turn to page 95. And we can start looking at the Administrative Services Fund. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris, who can talk about the city manager budget.
Thank you, Tim.
Very good. Yeah, thanks, Tim. I heard it once said about city or municipal government that we do all of the things that nobody else can make a profit doing. And that really actually seems to be the case. Our bottom line is not black and red, as Tim pointed out, but it's public interest. And it's hard to judge the value of the services we provide, but at the same time, there's a great deal of satisfaction in providing them. So in the city manager's office, I am a department of one, and the mayor does not like the term status quo, as I recall from last year. And so I've been trying to come up with a term other than status quo to use to explain my budget. And her hint was, I actually don't even remember her hint, but what I'm going to just say is it's the same as last year. So I'm not going to say status quo, but with the exception of the 2.5% cost of living and the increases in the cost of insurance and retirement, there are no changes to my budget versus last year. The one area we might be able to see some savings play out is in travel and training. At very least, my major professional association conference that I attend every year is going electronic this year, so there will be no travel associated with that. I'm not positive what the cost of the actual conference attendance will be. Anyway, minor savings there, just the cost of travel for that particular conference. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions about this budget that folks might have.
Thank you, Chris. I don't have any in the chat box. Do I have anyone who has questions? Councilor Reed, do you have a question? Oh, no, that's your cat. Sorry.
The cat has a question.
The cat has a question. Sorry. The tail I thought was your hand. I'm sorry. Anyone? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, city attorney.
And unmuted. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. The budget for the city attorney's office is similar, except for one respect. The only significant change is the outside counsel budget, which is line 21, legal services contracts. I requested the city manager an increase there due to workload issues. I've been relying on some outside counsels for both short-term questions as well as some longer projects to try to get a little more caught up. So other than that change, it is similar to last year's, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Shannon. Do I have any questions? I have none in the chat box. Do I see anybody else?
Chair Parsons.
Thank you.
Shannon, this is a conversation we've had for a really long time just about workload. Do you feel that the 15,000 is enough based on projects that potentially you know of today or things that potentially may be coming in 2021? I mean, it's only, you know, I guess it's not that much of an increase from last year. So
it depends on how you look at it. It's 130% increase.
Yes, but attorneys aren't cheap.
No, it's not. It's about $8,500. In addition to that line item, and I can't remember what it's called, there is another line item, Tim, if you recall, it's like $10,000 in the general fund for other more general legal projects. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And I meant to mention that when you said that, Councilor Freeman, that reminded me of that. So together with that fund, I think that it would be adequate. The long-term issues in terms of providing legal services for the city is difficult because lawyers are expensive, and there's an awful lot to do. One of the things that some of you may not know is, in essence, when I came in-house almost exactly 11 years ago, we actually kind of decreased, we increased the legal assistant because the city wasn't using a full-time legal assistant, but we decreased the full-time equivalent, if you will, of the attorneys because my partner assisted me, and we probably had the equivalent of 1.2, 1.3 attorneys in a sense that the city was paying for as outside counsel, and that kind of went away. And so this kind of partially makes up for that, but it was still kind of backtracking. So, but I'm hopeful that we can, and if we get some projects accomplished and we have some flexibility, I'll be back before you folks for some additional money. But right now, it's difficult to look at any increase in any line item in the current situation, so I tried to keep it minimal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Do we have any other questions? Mayor Clark?
Thank you. One of the things that was in the, instead of status quo, we're going to deal with them eventually, is that, and we did talk about this earlier this year, is the establishing the municipal code, which I understand from Mr. Johnson is a costly venture, and no, we haven't done that yet, but this is not the time, but it is something that we are keeping on the list of things we know we need to do eventually, and we will make that investment when it's at the appropriate time. But we're keeping that, I know I'm keeping that on my list, and we want to make sure that our legal department, which did such an amazing job this last year, I want to have everybody recall that a tremendous amount of effort had to go into the one case that we had to deal with people who were shooting at the quarry over in Polk County with bullets landing in homes in Keizer. And it was Mr. Johnson, along with the help of, and some complete support of our city manager and the West Keizer Neighborhood Association, and most of all, the Bauer family that made sure that that got taken all the way to a very satisfactory conclusion to protect people in our community. I want to thank Shannon for that tremendous effort. That made a huge difference for not only feeling safe, but being safe in our own homes. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other questions? Thank you, Shannon. Moving on, we have the city recorder, Tracy.
Good evening, everybody. The city recorder budget this year is consistent with last year. This budget covers my position and the deputy city recorder position. And there's not much to add. Our travel and training may be decreased based on our conferences later this year, whether they'll happen or not happen. So anyway, any questions for my department?
Okay, I see nothing in the chat box. I don't see any hands. Does anybody see any hands? I think we're good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, moving on. Michelle, Human Resources.
Good afternoon, everyone. My budget includes 2 FTE, or full-time equivalents. That's myself and our Human Resources Generalist, Kristen. And you will see similar numbers to last year with only one minor exception, and that's in the safety and wellness line. There's a small increase there because we're due to replace some AED batteries and pads. AED batteries cost $400 a piece. Pads are $51, so it's a minor amount in our budget. Also, as some others have mentioned, the training costs may go down a little bit depending on what we're able to take advantage of. We have been also trying to attend a lot of online training that's actually free, so there may be some reductions in that line item.
Okay, and there's a question for you, Michelle, in the chat box. Do you see it?
Hang on just a sec. The training line item includes a $3,074, which is membership in, $1,700, which is membership in LGPI, the Local Government Personnel Institute. That's a city membership. And the rest of it is travel and training for our 2 positions. So it does not include a separate line item for city-wide training.
Does that answer your question, Council Freeman?
Yes, but can I have a follow-up?
Sure, go ahead.
So Michelle, in your budget, there is no, at this time, there isn't any citywide training that is planned or that would come out of your budget.
There is no citywide training in the budget. That does not mean there is no citywide training planned. I think we've mentioned, Chris has mentioned in the past, that we are researching opportunities for providing some training in equity and inclusion. And we've found 3 or 4 different sources that are all actually free sources, both public and private. And so far, we think that we'll be able to put together some training that is helpful to our employees, starting with that. My expectation is if we determine that that doesn't meet our needs, we will find the funds within the existing budget. And if not, we will certainly come to council.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And I do have a question, and I can save it for later if that's where it goes on your HR system. So
the HR system, as I believe, is not in the budget. It's still on our wish list along with many other things. Tim would have to correct me on that, but I don't believe we were able to drop any of those items in the budget, especially with the change with COVID, etc. So.
Thank you, Michelle. So for clarity, Tim, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we could talk about that later, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The HRIS system is not included. I would also add that we do have citywide training. We get training in bloodborne pathogens, training in harassment issues. I think there's a few other things that are, I think we've looked at fire extinguisher, that kind of stuff. So we have done things similar to that. We do get a lot of that through CIS. I think that's who the
yes.
is. So.
We actually have access to a full training library through our CIS organization, covers our workers' comp. And so it's just a matter of previewing what they provide and determining whether or not it meets our needs. Most times it does, sometimes it doesn't. And then when it doesn't, we go out to other sources, such as the state system or public vendors that are actually offering training that they've done in-house for free to the public as a service. So there's lots of ways to access training that doesn't cost the thousands of dollars you have to pay if you hire a consultant to come in and do it for you. That doesn't mean we wouldn't do that if we found the perfect resource and thought it was a good match for us. But first we exhaust, as is our nature, all of our opportunities to do that with the lowest cost possible.
Mayor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Council President Freeman's point on the HRIS system, that is also on the list of things that last year was status quo and this year is on the things we're going to deal with. But that has not dropped off the radar because we understand the need. And we are going to continue to look for resources, as Michelle pointed out. Also want to appreciate that the CIS membership that we pay, while it might be referred to as free, it's included in the price because we do pay a great deal for our CIS membership and the services we receive. And this is a system, remind me the acronym, I believe is City County Insurance Services. Do I have that correct? So this is a statewide organization that provides for the needs of cities, large and small, in Oregon. So if people are curious about what they do, I believe all of their information is available online. But I appreciate making sure that we heavily use the resources we are buying. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, and I see that, Chris, you answered Kevin's question in the chat. So we do offer AED and first aid CPR training to our employees for free, as well as active shooter training. So thank you, Chris, for answering that question. Do you have any other questions for Michelle?
And Marlene, I'd like to add, since we've kind of gone into, do we actually do training? And we do it annually. The CPR AED training is provided typically biannually because the certifications are for 2 years. We have a number of employees who are required to have that training, but we also open it up to additional city employees. And we do that training in-house with employees in the police department and HR who are trained, who are certified trainers in those topics. Okay. We also bring a van here to do hearing testing on site. So that stuff happens annually. So my apologies for not mentioning that when Kim was asking about annual training, but it's just built into what we do, and I didn't even think about it. We do harassment training every 2 years, and we do bloodborne pathogen and usually 1 or 2 other topics every year, and every single employee attends. And that is pretty much unheard of with most organizations. So we're very proud of that record.
Thank you, Michelle. That answer your question, Kevin? You good? Awesome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, moving on to Tim, Finance.
The numbers may look similar, but we got a lot going on. The biggest thing that we're probably looking at is we did not complete the fiduciary review study during 2019-20. So those budget dollars are getting rolled into next year. But with this budget, I'm going to be looking to see how I can find dollars for number 1 priority, which is the HRIS system. That seems to be the ongoing thing, in addition to figuring out how to find dollars to continue to support the police department staffing. So those two seem to be the major areas where if we could get some inroads, we could leverage that into providing more services with less costs, so we can continue to do more with less. And that's what my budget is trying to do. Any questions?
Any questions for Tim?
Our auditing firm, we went out for budget 3 years ago, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago. It was 2016 was when we went out. I believe we signed a 3-year agreement with extensions for, I think, up to 4 more years. Don't quote me, but I think we're kind of in the middle of the agreement that we currently have. So I believe we have 2 to 3 more years with our current auditors, and then we'll end up going out to bid as well at that point. With respect to cell phone stipends, yes, those are reimbursements of personal cell phones. The city doesn't, there's the majority of the city staff that have cell phone stipends are using their personal cell phones. We don't issue cell phones with the exception of the Public Works Department.
Okay. Madam Mayor, you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. There's a mention under computer software information systems talking about updating the email and the voice email software. So that's already included in this budget because I know our Outlook has been in much need of updates, so that's still on schedule?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Mayor, were you referring to page 106 on the underneath the information systems on that question?
Yes, 106, and the footnote itself is on page 107, but it's to line 21 on page 106.
Okay, thank you. A little ahead of us, but that's okay.
Oh, I saw finance, so I just kept going.
Yeah, it's okay. I was going to say we hadn't got there yet, but okay, Tim, you better go.
Yeah, better you. All right, so moving on to the finance department. Within the information systems group, we have 2 full-time employees, a network administrator, and then a technician type of person. They've been super dang busy. We got a lot going on. The biggest things that we're looking at is obviously the email voicemail upgrade. You're going to see that is a significant increase in the software maintenance area. We're not going to be buying necessarily a lot of hardware for it, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into that upgrade. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is airplane kind of maintenance. We can't wait till it breaks. We got to fix it before it goes down. If the city were to go without email or voicemail, that would be really a disaster. It would get ugly fast, and it has been ugly fast. The other areas that we're looking at is network switches. We have over $100,000 of network switch activity we need to do. That's network switches. I had to figure out what this is. It's what you connect all your computers to that ends up connecting to your servers. It's what helps you connect. If we don't have network switches, we'll lose connectivity with each other, and that would be bad. The ones that we have are out of warranty at this point, so we're kind of on borrowed time. So we're going to be doing half of them next year, and then the other half probably the following year. So that's a significant investment of stuff that we really have to do to keep the city functioning. The other major thing that we're looking at within the IT area, the police vehicles, their camera video system is no longer being supported. So it was in our better interest to figure out a solution that we can use to update their video system. So that's where you're seeing the increase in the hardware area. We do have a few projects that we didn't do during 1920 that we'd like to roll into the next year. Probably the biggest would be putting in battery power, backup battery systems for some of our servers. We have some in place now, but again, a lot of them are getting towards the end of their useful life. So we need to get those replaced. The other area that we're looking at here is looking to see how we can find money for the HRIS system. This would be the budget that would get hit. We're also looking for money to update the finance utility billing system. So that way, when we do implement an HRIS system, they'll be able to integrate seamlessly. Without that seamless integration, adding the HRIS system would probably be more headache than it would be worth. So we need to make sure that we have that functionality going. Let's see. IS electronic meetings, Facebook Live costs. So far, from what the invoices that I've received, we're up to about $3,500 as far as doing Facebook Live electronic meetings. I still have a couple of invoices that I'm waiting to see, so that dollar amount will be increasing. With respect to what we're currently doing, I don't think that anyone else in the state or anywhere else that we're aware of is doing what we do, being able to put it into Spanish and putting it out on Facebook Live. I think we're the rare folks that are leading the way with that. Let's see.
Great. Tim, kind of a question then too on this Facebook Live cost. So would these go under the PEG?
Yeah, a lot of them would, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions for Tim under information technology? Okay, Tim, go ahead. Utility billing.
Okay. Moving on to utility billing, we have 3 full-time employees here. The costs, I would anticipate postage. I think we're going to be seeing an increase. The postage, the postmaster is still having troubles paying their bills, and I think I don't anticipate that we're going to see the costs there go down at all. With respect to contractual services, that's going to be a little bit of a wild card. Once COVID-19 has come and gone, I'm not sure if we're going to see folks going back to paying with cash and checks. My hope is that they would find this nice and convenient and continue using those payment methods, because ultimately this would allow us to reallocate some of the personnel costs elsewhere. Mm-hmm. It will really be somewhat of a workflow reduction, because it's a lot easier to import a batch of checks that have been processed at the bank rather than handling cash and handling checks and those kind of things. So I do hope that people will continue to use the online bill pay system, and that will give us an opportunity to use resources elsewhere. Let's see. Meetings, travel, and training. I think that's not. Meetings, travel, training. We do want to send someone to the Springbrook Annual Conference, and that typically takes place in Portland. They have been doing a lot more online stuff, so we may see that some cost savings there as well as they switch to more of an online training platform. And yes, credit card fees are under contractual services. And we get a discounted rate as a public utility. Our interest rates are typically 2 to 3%, but I guess it really ranges. If people start using their cashback cards, we pay for that. So it's not a free perk to people who have those type of credit cards. So the base rates are typically about 2%. If you start adding people with cashback features, you just add on that percentage amount plus probably some overhead to the credit card companies. So we can see credit card processing rates between 2 and about 4.5%, depending on the type of card.
Any other questions for Tim under utility billing? I see none. Anything else, Tim?
I think that's about it. I was talking really fast, so.
No, you did a great job. I think we understood all of that. I don't see any questions, so you must have done a good job. Yep, Dan says thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, well then moving on. Public Works, Mr. Lawyer. I think that's you. Unmute. Unmute. Oh.
There it is.
There it is.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This fund, the Public Works Non-Departmental Fund, captures the costs for myself and staff that are funded from multiple funds within the Public Works Department, and also all the costs associated with operations at our Public Works shop. The operations of the shop are one of the kind of the drivers behind this fund, because before this was created, to truly find out what costs at the shop were, we had to dig through, 6 funds and add up all those numbers in various lines throughout the budget, and it was quite cumbersome to accurately track shop costs. So this was created pretty similar to last year. I will point out that we did budget in the current fiscal year for a remodel at the lunchroom and break area over at the shop. And due to workload, the guys didn't get going on it early enough, and so I was not sure we were going to get it done before the end of June. And so we put it into next year. As it turns out, it was kind of a very good decision, because I think we would have been very challenged to get it done during the COVID. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions under the non-departmental fund for Bill? Seeing none, okay. Civic Center.
Civic Center facilities, this fund captures the cost to operate and maintain the Civic Center facility, everything but the community center portion of it. Really no changes here again this year, other than we haven't identified any specific improvements that are necessary. Last year, or the current year I should say, was mainly the HVAC system. Well, that was easy for me to say, wasn't it?
3 times fast, Bill.
Programming system upgrades that we have recognized and seen some savings on the utilities. Unfortunately, right now is the time of year we'd be able to really start seeing some changes with electricity, but with staff working from home and not everybody in the building, the community center not being used, it's really not a fair comparison. So I don't know how much we're saving at this point. I'd hope to have some information on that, but it's really, really difficult. I see question on line 21. Workers' compensation, I have to defer to Tim on that one. 27, equipment maintenance. Is the question, why are we so far under budget this year, Kim?
Sorry, I had to unmute, Bill. So it was line 24, not 21. That big for typing. So contractual service is just up some. Is that just for work that needs to get done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then let's see. Obviously, I need a ruler in here.
The equipment maintenance and replacement?
Yes, please.
I will say, I guess let me clarify, what's your question?
So, well, it's just increased up, and when there's no footnote of why there's an increase, I just kind of like to know.
Okay.
Sorry,
actually,
and maybe it's not a significant.
Not an increase in the budgeted amount. There's a decrease in what we spent. We got lucky and didn't have any more failures on equipment this year. So instead of we budgeted the same amount, but we're only anticipating spending $15,500 this year. Okay.
Okay.
So
Thank
it's not
you.
a true increase. It's just we were lucky in being under this year.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I looked at it incorrectly, so.
No worries.
So I have a question, Bill, on line 33. So we're not budgeting any money this year for any improvements to the Civic Center?
That's correct.
Okay. Did we get all those done, or?
When I say that, that's the City Hall Police Department portion of the facility. It does not include community rooms. Okay. We have some things that we are going to need to do, but they're not imminent, and so we just elected to we didn't find anything or see anything we felt we had to do this year, so we didn't budget for it.
Okay, so did we replace the carpet then in the hallways and in the living room?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I haven't been in there, so I didn't know.
Not the living room, just the hallways.
Oh, just the hallways. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Lawyer? Oh, we do. From Don Clark. Okay. How does line 38 relate to line 33?
Line 38 is the sinking fund for the Civic Center. That's a savings account for those catastrophic or major replacements that come along as the building ages. And 33 is the operational piece, or the items that we would do on a given fiscal cycle. So when we get to the point for that major failure or major replacement, the funds will be moved from line 38 into line 33.
Okay, do you understand that, Don? Got it. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
Marlene, I wanted to address your comment on the carpet really quickly.
Yes.
So we chose not to do the carpet in the living room area this year because it was in better shape than the carpets going down the hallways.
Sure.
And in addition to that, at least I don't know that everybody felt this way, but at least I felt that there was enough physical separation with the slate between the community center in that area that it didn't seem odd to have
two different carpets,
a different color of material than those that are coming down the hall. So it seemed like a good place that we could stop, not spend the money this year, and get a couple more years worth of use out of the existing carpets. So that's why we didn't do all of those.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure why. I know you talked about the hallways, but I wasn't sure about the living room. So thank you for that clarification. Anything else? All right, guys, we're just moving right along here. Citywide administration, is that you, Tim?
That is correct.
Okay.
So not a lot going on this year. With respect to this budget, this is kind of a catch-all for a lot of the things that impacts all the areas of the entire city. Within this, we're looking at an increase in the postage and printing area. It is about time for us to do another citizen survey. So I think we're factoring that in, plus as I mentioned before, I think we're going to see postage rates go up. In addition, that we've increased the city council expense line item. We've had requests for some additional traveling in the past. So I just wanted to make sure we had some budget in there to be able to accommodate that. If any city councilors identify stuff that would be relevant and meaningful for the city that you would like to go to. It's probably not enough, but having said that, we're here for something else and it got canceled, so who knows. With respect to liability insurance, you're actually seeing a decrease. That's because we have a significant number of claims that came through this year and got settled or almost settled. So we're not anticipating seeing a lot of that activity carrying into the future. So this is kind of a reset on our liability insurance rates and the retro plan. Basically, with our plan, we pay a percentage, I believe it's 75% of the annual premium. Then as claims in, we pay those claims up to 125% of the premium amount. So if we don't get a lot of claims in a given year, we actually make out like bandits. We're only paying 75% of the policy itself. If we have years where claims do sneak up on us like this year, it doesn't look so good. But over the course of the life of this retro plan, we've actually done significantly well. I can't remember the cost savings. Tracy, I'll turn it over so she can share the glory.
Thank you, Tim. I believe over the last 10 years, we've saved close to $120,000 by being on the retro plan. So we have very low claims. So we've done great.
And what does a typical liability claim look like? Good question.
That would be most of those liability claims come from arrests by the police department or trips, falls on sidewalks. Trying to think of some of the other types of claims, but those are the most common areas that we see claims in.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Jonathan?
And then Dan, that was Dan's question on the...
Oh, Dan, sorry.
Yeah. No, that was Jonathan's, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm confused. Oh, Dan wanted to know what... Oh, no, we got his answered. Kim wanted to know, do we need to have PPE and supplies equipment with this COVID-19? That's a very good question. Do we need to have those supplies? And if so, have they been ordered?
We do have some supplies. We have gloves on hand. We're getting face masks, that kind of stuff for the employees that need them. We have put up sneeze guards already, so if you make it to City Hall, you can see the fine additions. We're working on trying to get a hand sanitizer machine in the lobby. To answer your questions, a lot of those stuff we're going to be identifying related to this COVID-19 so that we can try to seek reimbursement if opportunities arise. But a lot of those will be hitting the overall office supply category, and yes, that is included in line 12. So you see it, 29,000 roughly of stuff.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Do we have any? Oh, Mayor Clark.
Found it. Thank you for the comment about the citizen survey. I had a note to ask about that, and I know this is a time when people are at home, so hopefully we'll get a good response from people on what's working and how we can continue to move forward. So thank you for making sure that's addressed. One of the pieces of good news as far as council travel and training, League of Oregon Cities is in Salem this year. So that's, if it does happen, it will be something that we will not need hotel or other travel accommodations. So that's a savings for us as a council. There's still some question about whether the Oregon Mayors Association is going to be able to meet. And so that's still a huge question mark. So I think a lot of our trainings will be going to electronic, especially for this year as we figure things out. But I want to just make sure that we are very cognizant about how we're using that money so we don't go over that. But I think we have a good chance of going significantly under the estimated budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Mr. Epley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to comment that we have identified that we have to have both a short-term response to PPE and other equipment to make our employees safe for COVID-19, but then also there will be a long-term response that we're going to have to budget in over the next year or so. Probably some fairly significant enhancements to the front customer service area, which will become permanent. Sneeze guards that we have now are really neat, and they're a great temporary solution, but they are not a permanent solution. But Tim got a hold of those literally a day before they would not have been available for potentially ever. I mean, he got them literally the last day that they were able to be made in time for us to be able to use them for protecting our employees up front for when we reopen coming up here soon. So in the long term, we'll probably do some sort of permanent installation of a glass barrier. It won't go all the way to the ceiling, but it will go from the countertops up, probably adding some sort of blast resistant film to it to just give it some protective strength that won't stop it from won't make it bulletproof or anything, but it'll help if somebody wants to come up there and try to get into that space. It'll provide some physical protection for those staff as well. So anyway, we're thinking through that. That's not in this budget. We'll be identifying those costs over this next year, and you'll probably see it next budget.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, that concludes the Administrative Services Fund. And at this time, I would entertain a motion. Is that correct? Am I right? Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion for approval of the Administrative Services Fund.
Madam Chair, I would move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the Administrative Services Fund as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the Administrative Services Fund as presented. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, guys, it is 7:23. Before we move on to the Public Works Fund, let's take a 10-minute break. And then when we come back, we can storm through these, okay? Anybody have an issue with that? All right, thank you. I call back to order the Budget Committee meeting. So we're back in session, and we will continue on. Now, each of these funds that we are doing, each one will need to make a motion and a second on after each fund is presented. Please ask your questions in the chat box. I will read them, and then we'll hear the answer from the presenter. Or if the presenter sees it at the time you're presenting, go ahead and incorporate that answer, please, question and answer into your presentation. So we're going to start with the Public Street Fund on streets, and I think this is Mr. Lawyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start off by saying as we go through all the Public Works funds, they are pretty much all remarkably similar to the current fiscal year. So I won't say that again as we get to each one. I thought I'd start with that. Street Fund. Revenues for the Street Fund come primarily from gas tax, apportioned by the state on a per capita basis. Clearly, we expect it to go down because of the COVID situation. I don't know how much it's going to go down in revenue. The plan to adjust or adapt for that will be just in adjusting capital projects, which for this next cycle is primarily River Road. Repaving River Road from basically Sandy Drive to Slingwood Drive. That will pretty much finish all of River Road from the south city limits to the north city limits. From Slingwood North, that was resurfaced here recently, and so it's not needed again yet. It'll be a number of years before that's needed again. In addition to that resurfacing project, there will be some additional funding available for the following summer's work. Design work and maybe get started on doing the ADA ramps in the areas. We're looking at going back and doing some local street paving. We haven't identified all those streets yet, but we'll be working on that. And so as we proceed through the budget year and we get a feel for where the revenue's at, we'll just reduce the resurfacing feet or miles, as the case may be, to adjust for available funding. I want to touch a little bit on the accomplishments we had for this current cycle. Designed and constructed the pathway into Light Street. That's pretty much done. Punch list to be done, but it's pretty much finished. We updated the ADA ramps on River Road from Claggett. From River Road to Claggett Street on River Road. Excuse me. That note's wrong. That's in the wrong place. But we did the ADA ramps from the south city limits to Claggett. We serviced that same stretch of street, and we also did some signal upgrades on that same stretch of River Road. One other project that doesn't show up right up front is 14th and Lockhaven, the additional right turn lane. The street fund paid for a portion of that project. The remainder of that came from the off-site transportation fund, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. Those are pretty much the highlights for the street fund. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Just a note on the footnotes. It says that the footnote for contractual services is line 46, and that's actually line 45 on page 118, 119.
Perfect.
And then I do have a question, if I may follow up, and that is, and I was just in the process of typing it in, and that's on the gas tax revenue. So that does have a significant impact on what we anticipate coming in. I know the original forecasts were looking pretty good. ODOT is, I believe, going to be doing some adjustments to their forecasts over the next month or two. So will that be pretty much a supplemental budget issue if they come in at less than anticipated?
We'll have to see if that requires a supplemental budget. My hope is that there's enough in the capital outlay section, resurfacing line item primarily, to just adjust for that lack of revenue, and we just won't do the project if the revenue's not there.
Okay, thank you.
And Bill, Councilor Freeman wanted to know for Delight Street, will cars park in the new paved area?
Well, I touched on that with a couple times, especially with the meeting I had with the residents. It is not illegal to park there, okay, because it's not a bike lane. If it was striped and designated as a bike lane, by state law, pedestrians can't use it. The primary reason for adding the pathway along Delight Street was for kids walking to and from school, Cummings and McNary. And so in evaluating a way to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish, I determined to just stripe it with a fog line. If parking becomes a problem, we will have to address that by establishing a no parking zone or no parking zones in the problem areas. And I talked to the neighbors about that. They understood that. We'll just kind of play it by ear as we move forward in time and address it accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Bill. There's a question from Jonathan. Is this the sidewalk fund, and how are things going with the school district and sidewalks around Cummings Elementary? Wasn't that part of the recent school bond?
That's a good question, Mr. Thompson. It was part of the school bond, and the school district is building a pathway from the Cummings School building to the north, and will connect it on their property inside the current fence, and they will come outside of the fence near the north end of the property into the right-of-way and extend the pathway up to the corner and build the ADA ramp at Dearborn. That's something they committed to me here about a year ago and have followed through. I've seen the plans. I think the permits are issued, and so they should be building that this summer.
Thank you. And Bill, a citizen question from Facebook asks if the Public Works Department covers graffiti cleanup, or is it cost to the neighbors of the skate park?
Depends on where the graffiti is. If it's on city property, we take care of it. If it's on private property, I know that Ben, the code enforcement officer, and I believe the Pier Court kind of combined work on residents cleaning up the graffiti or covering it up, or sometimes the Pier Court folks do some of that as well.
Thank you, Bill. And from Kathy Clark, the Delight Street project is beautiful.
Thank you.
Which, if you go by there, it is very nicely done. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Bill on the streets? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that the Budget Committee approve the street fund as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the street fund and a second. Discussion. All those in favor unmute and say aye.
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 Opposed? Say nay. Nobody opposed. Passes unanimously. Now to the street lighting district. Mr. Royer.
Actually, Mr. Wood takes that one.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Wood.
Thank you. The street lighting district, this is where we account for all the street lights throughout the city. The way that we've done this is when a subdivision goes in, when the lights go in, we do assess all of the property holders, an assessment to cover the costs of putting the lights in and then the ongoing electricity. Initially, the first year, it's a fairly significant charge of a couple $100s to each resident, and then that cost significantly drops as time goes on, and it really is just the electricity costs. For this upcoming year, we're anticipating maybe one, maybe two new subdivisions going in, which would trigger additional street lighting districts. Our goal overall with the street lighting districts is to keep the fund balance down as low as we can. So we've been kind of whittling away at that over time. So most of the streetlight districts will actually see the same assessment that they've seen probably for about 2 to 3 years now. So as the cost continues to go up, we're trying to keep the revenue about the same so that we can slowly work the fund balance down. And with that, if there's any questions.
Any questions on the street lighting?
Is the new business construction south of Chemawa considered part of the Keizer station, or is that an independent build, and will it be under the city of Keizer for infrastructure?
If you are referring, Mr. Dahl, if you're referring to the property just south of the overpass, or as you're going up on the overpass on I-5, yes, that is part of Keizer Station. It's called Area D of Keizer Station. That property is owned by the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz and Grand Ronde together. And so it is in the city of Keizer. It's a little bit different because it's tribes property and not private property. But it is in the city, and that development is overseen by the city of Keizer.
Okay.
Okay, and Mr. Lawyer, did you have another comment on that?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the street lighting district. I just want to let everybody on the committee know that the street lighting district's done the way Keizer does them is unique. And what it really amounts to is it saves the city a lot of money on an annual basis. There are a lot of cities that own and maintain and operate streetlights in their cities, and they've had to institute fees for that because of the costs. For Keizer, because they're individual districts, the city fronts the power bill on the front end and then gets reimbursed in the following year. And so technically, there's really no cost to the city on these things, which is a huge benefit overall to the community.
Bill, who pays the cost to upgrade the lights with the LED type lights?
That was done by the power companies, both Salem Electric and PGE. And when they did that, overall in their street lighting tariffs, as they call them, or their fees, they restructured all of their fees. And actually, there was a pretty good reduction in fees when the LEDs went in. There was a little less reduction on the first year because of the capital cost to replace them. But the power consumption is way down for LEDs from the regular lighting. And so all of the homeowners, business owners in Keizer that pay into a street lighting district saw a reduction in the rates because of that.
Great, thank you, Ms. Lawyer. And we have another citizen question from Facebook. Are sidewalks going to be put in around the neighborhoods near Kennedy Elementary? Are there any plans for that?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
No plans at this time.
And then question, how does the power portion of the lighting get paid? That's through the street lighting, right? Or through the assessed per customer?
Yes, the city pays the bill monthly.
Okay.
And then Tim and his folks account for that on an annual basis, send that information to the county, and it's collected through the tax records, to the tax assessments.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Clark, you have a follow-up on Kennedy?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. I would like folks to know that Kennedy Elementary School is one of the two that was identified in Keizer to be part of the Safe Routes to Schools. So they are one of the two that we are looking at through our Safe Routes to School coordinator that is now hired to cover all the schools. We don't have to do an individual program per school anymore on helping to provide more education as well as help identify projects for our students to get to Kennedy Elementary when they restart. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do I have any more questions of the street lighting districts? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
A motion that we accept the Public Works Street Lighting District Fund budget as proposed.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the street lighting district as proposed. Discussion. All those in favor unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you. And that takes us to transportation improvements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Transportation Improvement Fund, those revenues come from systems development fees charged to new development in Keizer. Once again this year, we don't have any planned projects. We're still waiting for ODOT to come to us and say it's time to improve the southbound on-ramp at I-5. They have yet to come to us, and so until they do, we're just kind of sitting on a pot of money waiting for them to come to us and tell us it's time to build it. There are some other projects outlined in the Transportation Systems Plan that these funds can be used for, but the priority is that I-5 on-ramp project, and as each year goes by, I know that project just gets more and more expensive. So that's kind of why it's first, and we're waiting until that happens to know what we have to spend for that project before we start planning for other projects.
Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. Do we have any questions? Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I recall correctly, we had an agreement with ODOT that expired. Did that get taken care of for that I-5 on-ramp?
I don't know the answer to that, Madam Mayor. I wasn't aware that that agreement expired. I understood it to be an ongoing agreement that was there until it was time to build it. But I can look into it and get an answer back to you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Epley shaking his head in agreement with Mr. Lawyer. Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Shannon has a comment.
Oh.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. On the freeway project, and Chris and Bill may agree, or I'm not sure. The agreement itself expired, but the agreement with ODOT recalled for the IAMP, or the Interchange Access Management Plan, to be imposed or agreed to, and that plan is in effect with ODOT. So I think that sort of takes the place of the agreement. I think there's still going to be arguably an obligation there through the IAMP process.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anything else on the Transportation Improvement Fund? I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the Transportation Improvement Fund as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Transportation Improvement Fund as presented. Discussion? All those in favor, unmute and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And now it takes us to the sewer. Mr. Lawyer.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. We've got Offsite Transportation Improvement Fund and Storm Fund in front of that.
That's not what's on my agenda.
As we look at the agenda, we don't need to do anything with the Offsite Transportation Improvement Fund. We do have the stormwater up next, though, page 123.
Oh, stormwater. Yes, I'm sorry. Page 123.
Okay. Stormwater Fund. The revenue for this fund is fee generated, and as was mentioned earlier, there is no proposal for a fee increase for the next fiscal year, so the fees will remain as they are today. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we will adjust any shortage of revenue through the capital improvement project side of things here. I hope there's enough funding allocated in the capital outlay section to adjust any loss of revenue. We have designed and under contract for a project on Shoreline and Cummings. It's realigning a 18-inch storm drain that's about 18 feet deep that runs under two houses. We determined that we really don't want that pipe that deep under the houses for obvious reasons, no easements or anything. And so we've got it designed under contract. We actually have a pre-construction meeting on Wednesday. I'll find out when the contractor wants to start work, but they want to get working on it. And I doubt they will finish it this fiscal year. I expect it will carry into next year. And that's the primary focus for this fund for both the finish of this year and next year. We've identified a couple smaller projects to do next year that are basically lining some pipe. When I say smaller, I mean smaller in terms of cost, not in terms of importance. We've identified some pipes that have some cracks in it that are letting some water in, groundwater and some other things, and plus some minor structural issues related with those cracked pipes. We can put a liner in there to reinforce the pipe. Again, those are deep, probably 16, 17 feet deep as well. Much less expensive to line them when we can than to have to replace them. Moving ahead with maintaining compliance with our Phase 2 permit that we received. Everything's on track to stay in total compliance and actually ahead of the game a little bit in some areas. And we strive to continue that process as we move forward through next fiscal year and on into the future. That's about the highlights. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lawyer? Councilor Reed.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to address the 126 GIS and just
Councilor Reed, we're not able to hear anything that you're saying. Can you type the question?
Really improved customer service.
And while she's typing that question, we do have a citizen Facebook comment. Thank you for your hard work, Mayor Clark and councilors.
Okay. Councilor, question. Can you explain GIS?
A lot more accessible. So,
GIS is the term stands for Geographical Information Systems. We hired an individual to do all GIS public works work for the department wide. A lot of that need for that position was driven through the stormwater, through the requirements through our phase 2 permit. But we identified the need to use those resources throughout the department. And so that individual's been on board with us now for about, I believe it's about 8 months, 9 months, doing a fantastic job. They've been working from home during this COVID. Luckily it's a position that can be done from home very effectively and efficiently. Really made a lot of progress in updating our overall information that we share with the community. There's a parks map that's been done that's interactive, that's on the website that was created through that position. And a lot of other what's called layers of information: water lines, stormwater lines, sewer lines, curbs, ADA ramps, sidewalks, all of those things for the street system are now built into our ARC map or our GIS system, and we have access to all that information and can query needs through that system, and it's really been a big benefit in the short time they've been on board with us. Did that answer your question, Counselor? Okay.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Any other questions on the stormwater? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the stormwater fund as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the stormwater fund as presented. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Now it takes us to the sewer. Mr. Lawyer?
It's actually me, so I'll take up Mr. Lawyer. Next year I'll add names to these.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just guessed.
That's okay. The city is part of a regional sewer system. The system is managed and operated by the city of Salem. They do a process every 2 years to go through and calculate the rates that they'll be charging the city, and then we end up passing along to the customers. We do the billing on behalf of the city of Salem and then remit to them in a monthly payment. Probably the largest check that we ever write to anyone every month is always to the city of Salem for sewer services. Sewer is rather expensive. At this point, I've been chatting with the city of Salem. We are at the point where the regional stormwater sewer water rate task force will start convening. They typically get together during the summer months. So some of the city councilors may be invited to join along on that committee as the city of Salem presents the rate structure to us. This year, we're estimating that it'll be about a 2% rate increase. So you see the revenues increasing approximately that much. That's yet to be determined, as I said before, so we'll probably have to come back with some kind of a supplemental budget to adjust this to the actual numbers once the city of Salem has completed their process of doing their rate study. So with that, like I say, this is an estimate at this point, the best information we have, and we will probably have to come back at a later date when we get more substantial information. With that, if there's any questions.
Do I have any questions of Mr. Wood on the sewer fund? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Freeman.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the sewer fund as presented.
I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the sewer fund as presented. Discussion? Seeing none, unmute. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. And now sewer reserve, Mr. Wood.
I'll go ahead and pass that to Bill at this point.
Oh, jeez, you guys.
Thanks, Tim. Madam Chair, committee members, the sewer reserve fund revenue comes from fees paid by development for properties that were not part of the original Keizer sewer district. This fund pays for trunk sewer lines, extensions, pretty much driven by growth. We really only have one line left identified to construct, and that's on Windsor Island Road from Lock Haven to the north. At this point, there's really no need to construct that line because there's no development or no need for sewer out there. When we have a need, we will most likely partner with a developer or somebody to build that line. Because while we have some responsibility, we're not 100% responsible to build the whole line. And so as soon as we see some activity out there, we'll get that line built. Until then, we'll just keep collecting funds as property outside the original sewer district develops, and put it in the bank and wait for the time to come to build that line. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So do I have any questions for Mr. Lawyer on the sewer reserve fund? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the sewer reserve fund as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the sewer reserve fund as presented. Discussion? All those in favor, unmute and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously also. That brings us to the water fund. Mr. Lawyer, I presume.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Water fund, fees are generated, or revenues generated by fees. Basically, people that use water pay for it. Really no major changes in here. You'll see some adjustments and some given lines in here. One of the ones I'll point out is line 56, plant maintenance. You'll see that number increase quite a bit from historical costs. One of the reasons for this fiscal year is we had a number of fire hydrants hit. And so we had to replace those fire hydrants. That's where we buy them from. Some of that cost is offset in the miscellaneous revenue line item. We will see a higher amount of money coming in on that side when we get reimbursed from the insurance companies, if we can get insurance companies information. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. The other piece of that is just things are more expensive, materials are more expensive. The brass that we use for our water system to make the connections to the main and to the services, that's increased substantially to the tune of almost 50% for some of the materials. Copper is really expensive. And so we just have to adjust our budgeting accordingly. Also, I see a question from Councilor Freeman. I was going to touch on this. Line number 40, sequestering agent. An increase of about $7,000 for next year. That's because, well, let me stop there and first explain what that is. That's a product that we inject at the wellheads that have water that's high in manganese. What that does, it helps suspend that manganese in the water instead of settling down in the pipes, creating dirty water complaints, and also some other aesthetic issues. Instead of settling in the pipes, it just passes through the system. And so we've identified two additional sites that the manganese levels are high enough that we want to start adding the material there. So by adding more material, we have to spend more money to buy it. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Water meters are going up a little bit more. We don't have any heavy equipment or vehicle needs this year, so there's no money budgeted there. Yeah, I think that's really the highlights.
Okay, we have a question from Francisco. He says, do we anticipate a loss of revenue due to COVID-19 impacts in the economy? With people out of work, they may not be able to pay their bill.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is we have no idea how much. And as I mentioned earlier, we can adjust for that with projects. In this fund, you'll see a transfer to the Water Facility Replacement Reserve Fund of $550,000 proposed. We can delay making that transfer until we know where we stand financially. That transfer goes into the Water Facility Replacement Reserve Fund, and that's the fund that we build projects out of. Mainline replacements, additional wells, improvements at pump stations for water quality issues, things like that. And so that's how we will adjust up front, and hopefully that's more than enough to make up for loss of revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. This is from Ali. Do we have any current data with how many bills are not being paid as of 1 May?
Tim, can you help me?
I'll go ahead and answer that one. As of today, we have about $17,000 worth of utility bills that are over 60 days. So those are the folks that would have been shut off about a month and a half ago or so. So most of those folks we've been in contact with, and we're making arrangements to figure out what their financial situation is. In addition to that, we have about $40,000 worth of accounts that are over 30 days. They would have been shut off actually tomorrow. And we are starting the process of reaching out and touching base with those folks as well. So overall, I would say we're doing fairly well, all things considered. We're still receiving a lot of payments in. Folks that we're contacting, and we have let them know that we're hoping to have everyone caught back up on their water bills by November, December time period. So that's kind of the length of time that we're shooting for at this point. However, if this pandemic continues on, if we have resurgences, that kind of a thing, we're going to have to reevaluate that as well. But we are tracking on a daily basis the outstanding balances.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. And we have stated earlier that we weren't going to shut off people's water, but do these people realize though that they still have to pay this bill someday, the total?
Yes, they're all very aware of that.
Okay.
At this point, they're aware that the bill will continue to accumulate, and most of them are just happy that we're not shutting them off in the midst of all of this. So,
good. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other questions on the water bill?
One other thing I wanted to mention, during the long-range planning meeting, I was asked about how much of our water system was still in steel pipe. And I think I made the statement as around 30%. Well, I was woefully wrong. I checked in on that, and we're actually at about 12%. About 77,000, almost 78,000 feet left in steel. So, well, that's still quite a bit of pipe. It's not nearly as much as I thought we had at that meeting. So I wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the water fund as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the water fund as presented. Discussion? Seeing none, unmute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. That takes us to the water facility replacement. Is that you, Mr. Lawyer?
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the project fund. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, money's transferred from the water fund into this fund, and that's where we build projects. The other source of revenue for this fund is systems development fees paid by new connections to the water system, new houses, new apartments, new commercial buildings, what have you. Those are based on meter sizes. We are finishing up an update to our McNary pump station this year to convert that, to make that an automatic start backup engine and convert it to natural gas. That will enhance our emergency operations when we need them. Not should we need them, it's when we need them. Currently, that pump station is a manual start and run on propane. And so if we run out of propane in the tank, the pump shuts off. So by converting it to natural gas, it's a more assured fuel source, and making automatic start, it does it on its own, which is an enhancement to the overall operation for the system in an emergency. Looking in next year, want to continue our water main replacement program. And also, the goal at this point is to design and install a filter system at the Meadows pump station to improve water quality. That particular well has been less than great water quality from the beginning. It has the capability to produce about 1,200 gallons a minute, and we use it sparingly throughout the year because of the water quality issues. It's to the point now where I've made the decision it's really time to be able to take advantage of that production more than we have been able to, and the only way to do that is to put some filters in. So that's the goal, and that's one project we can certainly adjust for based on revenue shortages. We might, for instance, do the design this next fiscal year, and build it the following year if we have to. Cut back on mainline replacements if we need to. In cutting back on mainline replacements is not what that basically means is we'll just potentially could be out fixing more leaks in the steel mains. There's fairly minimal cost to that. There's not typically a risk for property damage because when steel mains leak, they leak through a hole. They don't break. Cast iron, ductile iron mains, they'll break, completely snap in half. That could create higher risk of property damage. Steel mains don't do that. They just get a hole. And I don't want to minimize it, but they're a lot easier to fix than a cast iron or ductile iron main. And again, it's just a matter of a workload for the staff. And as we go through the year, monitor revenues, we will adjust accordingly. See a question from Mr. Kohler. Have to replace a pump. Is this the fund it comes from? No. If we have to replace a pump, that comes from the water fund. And there's a line in the water that says pump maintenance. That's where that comes from. This facility project, this is the project fund. That's where we build things out of. So, any other questions?
Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the Water Facility Replacement Fund as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Water Facility Replacement Fund as presented. Discussion? All those in favor, unmute and say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. I think that was a late aye, not opposed. So it passes unanimously. And we did have another Facebook comment to the staff of the city. Great community relations on the water, by the way. Okay? I just want to make sure we have that in the record. Okay, park services fee. Mr. Lawyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Park Services Fund revenue comes from a combination of general fund support and the parks fee the City Council enacted 3 years ago now?
A couple of years, yeah.
Three fiscal years. Actually, 2.5. I think it's about 2.5 calendar years, but 3 fiscal years. Once again, really not a lot of changes here. I do want to touch on the accomplishments that we made during the current year, and that's primarily the skate park, phase 2 of the Carlson Skate Park remodel, including rebuilding the bowls and the half pipe and some other enhancements. Replaced the tennis court at Willamette Manor Park. That project is almost finished. Replaced swings at Northview Terrace, and purchased a pickup and performed system-wide tree work, which we continue to do. Moving into next year, we want to update the master plan and potentially the STC methodology, depending on what the master plan update looks like. If there are significant changes to the capital improvement portion of the master plan, that will require the STC methodology to be updated. If there are not significant changes, it may not need to be updated. We also plan to replace the play structure at Claggett Creek Park with rubberized fall protection surfacing, the same surfacing we have at Meadows and at the Big Toy. expand the parking lot at the north end of Claggett Creek Park, replace stairs at Northview Park, that's on the south end of the park coming down from Wiesner Drive, and also install power gravel pads for at the amphitheater, the Keizer Road Amphitheater, for some food trucks and for the concert series and whatever other events at the amphitheater they would want to participate in. And there's also some miscellaneous paving repairs throughout the park system, parking lot repairs. We've got most of our pathways up to date, so there's not a lot of that. Just various places that need some attention. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, from Kevin Dial, with the addition of the food truck venue, will this increase park rental income?
It could. We were looking primarily for during the concert series, which we sponsor that. So, I don't know how much it would be. I don't think there would be, quote, rental income from the food trucks. It would be more a portion of what they sell. That's my take on it, or what my vision is of it. If it becomes very popular and in very demand, we might want to look at implementing a rental fee for a food truck there as well, to see how it takes off when we get it ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lawyer. Any other questions on the park services fee?
Madam Chair.
Councilor Freeman.
I don't have a question. I just really want to give a shout out to the parks employees who are doing a fabulous job. I happen to walk a lot at Keizer River Rapids Park, and as we all know, that's a very large park that takes a lot of mowing, and a lot of people are out during COVID-19 walking and keeping their physical distancing, and the gentleman that mows that area is so courteous of people walking. He stops the mower. He doesn't, if there's small children, he's just so aware of everything. The trash is picked up. It's just a shout out to Bill and to all the parks employees for just keeping that park, and I'm sure all the other parks in stellar condition. So thank you.
Thank you,
Councilor Freeman.
I'll pass that along to the park staff, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to keep the level of maintenance as high as we could through the last 4 to 6 weeks, because we changed our staff schedule and we split them into 2 groups, so we really only have 2 people in parks on duty every day instead of the typical 4. Now they're here 7 days a week instead of 5, but by cutting your staff in half, you minimize, you cut in half what you can get done. Weather's been very cooperative, and they've been able to keep up on things, and I will certainly pass that along to them. Thank you.
So, Mr. Lawyer, I have a question. I know that the big toy is closed right now. We don't know when we're going to be able to open that big toy. So are you going to wait to put the shades up until we have the go-ahead that park is open then?
Yes.
Is that the plan? Okay.
Yes. I've been thinking about that a lot the last few days when it's been so hot. And I don't want to encourage people being there, and my feeling is if we put them up, it's going to encourage more encouragement for people to be there. So
sure.
As soon as we get word through the governor that we can open the playgrounds, we'll get the shade sails up.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions on the park services for Mr. Lawyer? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the Park Services Fund as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Park Services Fund as presented. Discussion? Seeing none, unmute. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Nope, that passes unanimously, and it brings us to the park improvements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Park Improvement Fund, revenue comes from systems development fees. Those are paid by single-family homes and multifamily homes, any kind of residential development. With our focus being on not improvements, but replacements and maintenance in the park system, we haven't looked real hard at doing anything that would qualify to use these funds. These funds are really regulated in how they can be used. They can only be used for capacity increasing or growth enhancement type projects. An example of that would be, I'll use the Little League field as an example. Replacing a backstop, rebuilding a field, dugouts, those kinds of improvements or replacements are just that, a replacement. They don't increase the capacity of the facility. Now, if you were to put lights in down there that you could then play games at night, that is capacity increasing. A portion of those costs would be eligible for parks improvement funds. They're not currently for the Little League complex because those improvements were left out of the Parks Master Plan on purpose because of the traditional way the complex was managed. As part of the Parks Master Plan update, we will be looking at the Little League Park and including it in improvements that may be allowed or part of Parks Improvement Fund participation. I hope that all made sense. I'm not sure it all did. I went through that pretty fast. But at this point, again, because we've been so focused on putting the parks fees to use and getting that spread out through the park system, we really haven't taken time to look at any capacity increasing improvements for a year or so. So we'll keep moving ahead, get through the master plan update. That'll give us a good roadmap moving forward to know how we can use these funds in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Royer. Any questions on the park improvement? That was the cat's tail again, I take it, Ms. Reed. Yes. Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Keizer Budget Committee approve the Park Improvement Fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Park Improvement Fund as presented. Discussion? All those in favor, unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Or opposed, say aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. We do have a citizen comment. They said, we echo Councillor Freeman's compliment to the Keizer Park staff. That was a question for David. So we got through the first page. Now we can continue on if you'd like until 9 p.m. or we can stop and start again tomorrow. What would you like to do, Mr. Epley?
Actually, I think we kind of need to stop because we have published
the
different things we're going to attend to each day, and so we can't actually move forward. However, I will say this was as efficient as we've ever gone through a budget meeting. So fantastic. Well done.
Good job, guys. All right, so same time, same place.
Same format.
Same format, everything tomorrow, guys. All right.
Also, if I may, David Dolly reported that over 900 people have tuned in and watched the budget video feeds, the various feeds.
Wow. That's social media at its finest, you guys.
Spectacular. So that's really amazing outreach to the community.
Amazing outreach. Fantastic, guys. Okay. We are adjourned. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.